Welcome back to PCOS Healing Adventure with me, Dr. Elmi Patel, pharmacist and fellow sister. In today's video, I'm excited to have a special guest joining us, Drew Lederman. Today, we're going to talk about her journey with PCOS and how that inspired her to start her company, Resist. She's a founder and CEO of that. So welcome, Drew. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So we'll get into the questions, and I'm really excited about this conversation. So why don't you start off with telling us when and how you were diagnosed with PCOS?
Yeah, totally. So I was diagnosed at 18, but I had thought that I had had it for a while. I had irregular periods ever since I got my period, and I got my period pretty young. So I got my period for the first time at 11. And didn't get another one until I was 12. And I was told that this was, a quote unquote pre-period, kind of setting you up. And at 12, I started having a period every maybe 3 months. And then it just slowly kind of went away. I went to my doctor and they said, let's put you on birth control for your skin. I was like, okay, for my skin, it would regulate my periods. I was like, okay, this sounds great. And my dad is actually a gynecologist. So I had someone in my ear saying like, that sounds right, let's do that I trusted and who I love. And so originally thought that could be a PCOS symptom early on. Went on birth control. I gained a lot of weight from that, but my skin did clear up. So I guess the goal was accomplished. But I did end up going off of it because I was gaining weight and getting a little bit worried about that. So I went off of it. I went on Accutane instead. And then I was going to college. So I went on birth control again. And after my first semester, I started having more symptoms. I gained a little bit more weight. At that point, I was, and still am, very eco-conscious. I was a vegetarian and just really conscious about my animal product consumption. So even, very, very close to vegan, even though I wasn't like over that threshold yet. And I went home for winter break and my skin was pretty crazy. And this was especially heartbreaking since going through Accutane, and anyone who's done Accutane knows how difficult it is, especially on your mental health. And just having it come back felt like a real step backwards. And so my dad was like, okay, maybe we should have a vaginal ultrasound and just see if maybe you have some cysts. Or before that, we did a hormone panel. And they told me my labs look normal, but I didn't feel good. And I was like, I get it. They look normal. I did have a pretty bad vitamin D deficiency. But otherwise, my testosterone levels were fine. But we went ahead and did the vaginal ultrasound, which at 18, and I'm sure people who were diagnosed even younger than that feel this way, but it felt very invasive at the time. You're having something inserted inside you. I didn't really feel like it was explained very well to me what it was going to be, because when you think of ultrasound, before you're thinking of pregnancy, this was when I was 18 years old, I thought it was going to be kind of like on your stomach, like how you see in movies. Right. But no. And so it felt very invasive. And it was like, I was already very emotional about the whole thing. And I could see the ultrasound next to me, and the nurse was kind of pointing out where all the cysts were. And it looked to me like there were just cysts everywhere. Like it was just like a balloon of cysts. And, I just started sobbing. So my first introduction to my PCOS was like very emotional. And I really felt like I was going to have this like debilitating disorder. But as time went on and I've learned so much more about PCOS, like I honestly found like a great community, and women with PCOS are honestly the strongest women I know. So it's honestly a community I'm proud to be a part of. But definitely the introduction to it when I first was diagnosed was, like many women probably feel this way, very scary. And, you feel like your body's against you, like something's wrong with you. And that like, I really felt like it was my fault. Like I had done something to cause this.
Lots of things you said there. So first of all, I'd never heard of a pre-period, so that's new. I never heard it referred to as like that.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting that, like, you were saying your dad is a gynecologist. And so, like, you had that resource and you still felt that way. So, I'm sure everyone who doesn't have a father as a gynecologist, I'm sure, you can imagine only how much more scary it is for someone to go through that without having like their own personal doctor walking them through these types of things. And your experience with the ultrasound definitely reminds me of mine as well. Like I was probably in my early 20s, but I think I also didn't expect that. I didn't realize it was going to be like internal. And I agree, it was a little traumatizing in the sense that, it wasn't explained to you like, oh, this is what it is. And I feel like as doctors, they may know what it is, but when communicating to a patient, like, oh, this is what you're going through, I feel like sometimes, the communication doesn't always get across. And so I definitely understand how you felt when you were first diagnosed. And I'm sure many of the viewers feel that way too.
Yeah. It was also just very, I love my father, and I think, and we've talked so much more about this now that I've, educated myself on PCOS and, taken courses and just done a lot of research. And we've talked a lot about this, what they're taught, what doctors are told. And, you want your doctor to be constantly educating themselves, like, and learning about the new treatments and things like that. But in the beginning, he was like, said what I think a lot of doctors do say, you're already on birth control, or we're going to put you on birth control, and, we'll chat when you want to get pregnant.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's exactly what I got told. And they were trying to tell me too, like, oh yeah, this will help with your acne. And I was like, of course, that's going to be like so good. But obviously I didn't really, like same as you, didn't really understand the role of birth control in PCOS at the time. And I myself was on it for like 7 years unknowingly, like just taking it every day. Okay, great. Let's go on to the next question. So since you said, you started learning about it yourself, so what is one thing you found helpful in managing your PCOS? And of course, this is different for everyone, as everyone's PCOS is different, but if you could just share what you found helpful.
yeah, things that I found helpful. I mean, I feel like a lot, kind of knowing that my PCOS is different than the next person's, and, not really looking too much into social media and not letting that affect me too much, especially when I was first diagnosed, kind of really following the fitness influencer circuit and thinking, okay, like I'm just going to do everything that the fitness influencers say because they're beautiful and they're fit and they're healthy, because fitness is in what I thought was inherently healthy, And so I learned that that's not necessarily true, and that some of the, fitness influencers are not as quote unquote healthy as they may seem. And that things that may seem healthy, like intermittent fasting, or, just chicken and rice diet, that's not a sustainable lifestyle for me, and that my happiness definitely comes first. Yeah, and that's not really who I want to be. And I totally, people who love that lifestyle and people who want to do that, I think that that's great. But that the idea that everyone is different really hit home for me when, kind of in the past few years, just what ended up working for me, like as far as my hormonal balance, just watching my health kind of come back, like watching my energy levels rise, like watching my skin clear up, it's like a 180. And I think a big part of it really did come from relaxing the chokehold that social media had on me.
Yeah.
And the idea that what works for one person might not work for me. And the idea that some foods are dangerous to me, like the idea that it's going to hurt me, or, eating this donut or eating that piece of cake at a birthday party is going to hurt me in some way. I think that the idea that food is fuel is very, very key. And that's the tagline for Resist Bars. It's resist what doesn't fuel you. Like, don't resist foods you want. Just the foods that aren't going to fuel you, don't bother with them. Like, you don't need it. Like, if you don't want to eat the protein powder, don't have it. Like, if you don't want to have, like, again, the chicken and rice diet, I just associating that with kind of like the picture of health. There's other ways to achieve that, and just not demonizing any foods, and knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, food is fuel, and you want to fuel your body because it's the only one you have.
Yeah, nicely said. I think like with social media, I feel like, us people with PCOS, we,
Mhm.
like we were talking about, we don't get the support from our providers. And sometimes we're like really desperate. And so then we kind of just jump on Google, Instagram, get whatever information we can get our hands on. But I think, like you said, you have to evaluate the information. Like, first of all, it's not medical advice, it's just education and differentiating that, and
Mhm.
realizing that what works for that person may not work for you, and vice versa. So that's definitely really important to remember when trying to get information about PCOS, or
Yeah.
really anything related to your health, like you were saying, or food, from social media.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it just really reminds me of when I quit drinking coffee because I saw so many
Oh yeah.
influencers telling me, oh, coffee is so bad for your PCOS. You don't want to drink coffee. And I was like, I guess I can't have coffee anymore, or I guess,
Hmm.
I can't have carbs anymore. And just cutting out all of those things because one person says it's so. And then watching, like, just a few months later, people be like, that's not true. Just watching
I know.
like people contradict themselves, and then you have one influencer who you love says one thing, and another influencer you love that says another, and it's like when you're not a professional yourself, especially like when you're first diagnosed, can you imagine just
Right.
hearing all of this two-sided? And especially on TikTok, I think this is particularly prevalent, where people will stitch other
Yes.
creators' content and be like, let me tell you why that was wrong. And then you can see those videos have millions of views. And the amount of people that are now convinced that they can't have coffee or whatever it is, or that they can't get pregnant with PCOS. Like, there was a huge
Yeah.
wave of girls my age and younger saying like, oh, I'm so lucky that I like don't have to worry about getting pregnant. And when they're in college, I'm like,
Right.
what? There's just so much to unpack there, but like,
Hmm.
it's not true, like,
Exactly.
not all women with PCOS struggle with fertility. And, of course, there's a portion that does, but to just put it out there in a joking
Yeah.
way to make it seem as if there's no chance, it's dangerous on so many levels.
Exactly. And like some people say, or some women with PCOS get told by other women, like, oh, you're so lucky you don't get a period. But that's not even, yeah, that's like going along with what you're saying. That's not actually a good thing.
And it's crazy, just like the dogma around women hating their periods. It's like, when did we
Hmm.
start to hate them so much? Like, that's a
I
lot to
know.
unpack, though. That's a whole other conversation.
Yep. And that goes into like what we're being fed as, like from a society aspect, and, being promoted, or like birth control being promoted for the wrong reasons. And I did a whole different YouTube video on that I can link. So if anyone wants to learn
Yes.
more from this conversation, refer to that video. But you mentioned about your resist bars, so let's get into that. So what
Yeah.
inspired you to create the resist bars?
Yes, definitely. When I really started learning about my hormonal health was when I realized the things that I was eating as far as fitness foods um, were not fueling me. They weren't really helping me. And this was when I was just obsessed with the influencers. And there's some that I still really like. And I think that they've gone back and said, I can't believe I, did cardio 6 times a week and, promoted a
Wow.
1,300 calorie diet. And, I think there's growth to be had. And I think that a lot of fitness influencers have done that. But kind of when I was first diagnosed, what I was seeing about PCOS on the internet, and I did speak to a hormone doctor, a gynecologist who's like triple board certified, and she just has the works on hormone health, and she does a lot of like hormone therapy and hormone replacement, things like that. And I said, what do you recommend? And kind of she basically said exercise and low carb, low sugar, try to stay away from sugar. It's like, great, got it. I already considered myself pretty healthy, just because I had some allergies that made me stay away from certain foods. But now I'm good. I can eat them again, which is amazing. I can have pasta.
Oh,
it's okay.
That's good.
But I used to break out in rashes on my arms. So I'd already had this like pretty healthy diet, sort of disordered, but I've, worked on that since then. But, I started going to the gym and following the fitness influencers plan. And I started getting really into fitness foods. So it's like the BCAA powder and the pre-workout and the protein bars and the protein powder. And it was all from these like big fitness brands. It was really all they had at the time. Now you have like Aura Organics and what is it, Atlas? Maybe not. These kind of natural versions and of pre-workout and of BCAA, and even just like the idea that food could replace those things was just like not in my brain. Like I just did not think about that at all. And the only brands that were out there were really designed for bodybuilders and men. Yeah. And just the studies that are done with these products, I was taking creatine at the time and I wasn't even really lifting heavy enough to be taking product like that. In addition, a lot of the research that's done on, pre-workout and creatine and all of these products, a lot of this research is done with male control groups and just male people. And so I didn't know any of that. And I would just follow what the influencers were doing basically to a T. It was like, I would eat what they ate and I would watch their, get ready with me's, eat what I eat in a days. And I would just be like, I'm doing this for my PCOS, I'm doing this for my health, and just did it absolutely to a T. And this is where my health started declining. I wasn't getting enough calories. Yeah. I basically completely cut out carbs and sugar. I was living on mostly raw foods. So I had a lot of problems with bloating. And again, I was a vegetarian at the time, almost close to a vegan. And I was in college, so I was also drinking. So just kind of this whole thing where my cortisol levels were crazy. I was doing a lot of weightlifting, but also a lot of cardio. And my anxiety got really bad because this pre-workout I didn't do like the dry scooping because that wasn't a thing back then, but I would take it almost every day before a workout. And my anxiety just went through the roof. Cortisol levels probably off the charts. And then I would end my workout with a lot of protein powder. And the brands that I was using were filled with a lot of fillers. So you had like sucralose and gums and, everything in between, all this fun stuff you can think of, artificial flavors and things like that. And so this was basically my diet back then. And sometimes, because I was living this crazy college lifestyle, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this as well, I would just have like protein shakes and protein powders and protein bars like as my daily food. Like, and then maybe I'd throw in like an apple. And I know now, knowing what I know about blood sugar, I can see why my skin started getting bad and why I was always tired, because I was just having these huge blood sugar spikes, apples with no fats or proteins, just like right through the roof. And these protein powders and protein bars were really high in carbs. And if not, they were really high in sugar alcohols. I was like obsessed with Quest bars and I would buy them in bulk.
Me too.
And I was like, I wonder why I'm so bloated. I wonder why I feel terrible. Yeah. And especially when my acne came back, I was just like, I can't believe this is happening again. I thought, after Accutane, I wouldn't struggle with this. And how could it be that if I'm following everything the influencers are doing and they look like that, why don't I look like that? And so I didn't think, oh, maybe I should stop doing this. I was like, gotta do more. And so I decreased my calories even more. And it just started getting really, really bad. And so I went home for my summer break, and my family, basically my mental health got so poor because of a host of reasons, but having to do with my hormones. I was considering leaving school for a semester. And that's when I took a step back and said, I think that that this isn't serving me, and the foods I'm eating aren't fueling me, and the workouts I'm doing aren't serving me. And then the inkling was maybe I should stop following what these influencers are doing and just start working out again for me instead of for the body that they have.
Right.
You know, working out for my body, not for their bodies. And so I stopped eating all that stuff. I just cut it out completely. I started eating some meat again, mostly like poultry. And I started feeling better. The energy came back pretty quickly. The headaches went away. My skin was still a mess. And so I started working on supplements. So I got my panel done again. I went off birth control. I got waited a little bit. I was told to like wait until my hormones went back to their natural cycle. I hope that that's correct. I don't remember how long I waited, but I did my hormone panel and I started a pretty large supplement regimen. I don't know if that is something that was perfect back then, but
Right.
now I know so much more about what I need. But I had a lot of vitamin D, a lot of zinc. I started taking magnesium. Just a lot of fiber also I added to my diet. And I started eating more cooked foods. And this made a huge difference. I had so much less bloating. My skin started clearing up, and I stopped staying away from carbs. I didn't have that much carbs at the time. I was still having some disordered eating from just the fear of gaining weight. It really came from that. But I started introducing carbs back in, like tried to really include a lot of whole grains, mostly Dave's Killer Bread, if you know that brand.
Yes.
I just love it so much. I love seed bread and stuff that's crunchy. So that was like my main source of carbs. And that's when my skin started clearing up, and my hair started getting thicker, which I was like, I didn't know that was going to happen at all. And of course, like there's, I'm not perfect and I'm still learning about my body and what it needs. But I started introducing cardio back in just in small amounts, and just doing workouts that I like. So I know some experts will say running is not so good because of your cortisol levels, but I think if you want to run. If you like running, run. If you like dancing, dance. Like if you like walking, walk. Like the best workout, I think, is the one that you like and the one that you want to do. So that's my big idea on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you want it to be something you enjoy and it's sustainable, because PCOS is something you have your whole life. It's not going to be, okay, I do this plan for 4 weeks and that's it, or anything like that.
Yeah. The sustainability aspect is really like the crux of it, especially with diet. Like I tried every diet under the sun, I think. But the one that I just kept hearing from, like, even my doctor recommended this to me, and I could never do it right. I would get it for like 3 days and then I would not be able to do it. And you can probably guess what it is. It's keto. I couldn't sustain that. And I never could get into ketosis. And then like I would just get on a cycle of like that keto headache issue. And I knew that, I'm going to have PCOS for the rest of my life. And even when my symptoms got better, I was like, I never had the idea that I'm cured.
Right.
Like I know that that's something that's kind of going around right now. It's like, I cured my PCOS, or I like made my PCOS go away. I'm like, that's not how it works.
So everything you've been sharing, I think, is relatable to many of, it's definitely relatable to me. A lot of the disordered eating, a lot of the, advice from providers in like a 15-minute appointment, they tell you, okay, cut out like these 10 food groups. I'll see you in a year. Hopefully you lost weight. And when you need a refill on your birth control, kind of, treatment that they give you. But it's like easy to say, do that. But like you said, it's so hard to implement things like keto. So what I was going to say is, like, you have to remember the influencers or whoever you're following. What I learned is like, it's great, but sometimes if you don't have PCOS, like your body is affected so differently. Like the people you're following, I don't know if they had PCOS or not, but if they didn't, then, what works for them? Our bodies with PCOS are so different.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like the idea that I thought that it was all the same kind of before I really learned, the problem was it really just made me feel like I was broken.
Yeah, I
If it
know.
was working for them and I felt like I was doing, and then also the internet, because when I was thinking, okay, exercise, I was told to lose weight, and I
Yeah.
have gained weight since then. And so it's crazy to me to think that I was like 120 pounds and they were telling me to lose weight. Like that, I was already, that was an unhealthy
Yeah.
weight already.
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds like it.
you know what I mean? So it's I think that is the absolute wrong way for a provider. I don't think should ever really tell someone with PCOS that weight loss is the cure, quote unquote, because the symptom is weight gain. Again, it just makes, I mean, it made me feel like I was broken, that my body was never gonna be able to look the way I wanted it to, and I was never going to be able to feel good
Right.
in the body that I had, and in the body that in the weight that my body naturally wanted to be at.
Yeah, I think the weight loss thing is like the biggest myth with PCOS. Like, oh, if you lose weight, you'll cure PCOS. But one, you can't cure PCOS, and two, weight gain is a symptom of PCOS. It's not like your weight caused you to have PCOS. It's really the other way around. Like, because you have PCOS, you have more weight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually something when there was another question that you said, and I was like, oh, don't forget to say that. But the whole kind of causing the weight gain symptom. I was recently reading something about ancient PCOS and how long PCOS has been around. And it really, I wish that I knew this sooner, because it made me feel very empowered about my PCOS and about the community of women that we're a part of. Um, and the gist of it was that PCOS used to be almost a good thing when we were living in hunter-gatherer societies and there were times
Mhm.
of great scarcity. The insulin resistance that a lot of us have made it so that we used our energy more efficiently over time, and our bodies were more robust, we had a little more weight on our bones, so we were able to have children in a healthy way in times of scarcity, and we had less children because of PCOS as well, so we were able to care for them, and prevent less premature death.
Right.
So it's just very interesting to look back and think those women with PCOS in that time were leaders of their society because they had these robust bodies and less children and were able to become leaders. And that just really, I had never read that before. And whenever you think of PCOS, you think of the kind of negative symptoms,
Right.
when there are positives to it. And, in addition, again, like I'll say it, the women I know with PCOS are some of the strongest people I know. And it takes a lot of fortitude to have something like this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like for me, and like I'm gonna say, I think for you too as well, it's helped us kind of give us like a pathway and a purpose that I feel like I didn't have before, in a sense that like, I created this YouTube channel and Instagram to create more awareness because of kind of like what you went through, right? You didn't have the resources yourself, you didn't have the food that you needed. So you're like, hey, I'm going to create something like this for myself and other women. And I feel like, because of PCOS, I'm doing that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think education is the most important thing you can do when you have any kind of disorder, but especially with PCOS, because nutrition is such a big part of it. But everyone can benefit from taking good care of their health and hormones.
Exactly.
It's so funny because sometimes I'll say that my inspiration for the bars was hormone health, and men will be like, oh, okay, so it's not for me. I'm like, so you don't have hormones? Like, it's so funny. Like, they're convinced that they don't have hormones.
Yeah. Goes back to the education part of it.
Again, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And another thing about education that has really shocked me is like environmental toxins and endocrine disrupting
Oh yeah.
chemicals and things like that, that just doesn't feel like it was talked about when I was diagnosed. And now I feel like I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. I feel like over the years, especially I feel like with COVID, I feel like people have become more aware of their health because certain, disease
Yeah.
states put you at risk for getting COVID or complications with COVID. So I think that has really, opened people's eyes. And I feel like as a society, we're getting a lot of diseases earlier in life. And so I think maybe with PCOS, right, like all of these toxins that we're exposed to, I think there's just more awareness about it, which is a good start, definitely.
Yeah.
And I always think that this is definitely hopeful for PCOS, because I think this will, allow there to be more research, more education to providers, so they have more resources and tools to help their patients as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it has, just people with PCOS really pushing for providers to learn more and, promote maybe a more holistic help rather than immediately going to metformin
Right.
and spironolactone and the like, or birth control,
Exactly. Well, I think we had such a really good conversation, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate you talking, about your mental health. I think that's really something that really a lot of PCOS affects a lot of women's mental health, and I think that's not
Mhm.
talked about enough, so I definitely can relate to that part of it too, and the disordered
Yeah.
eating. So thank you for sharing about that. Is there anything else that you want to mention that we didn't get to discuss?
Hmm.
A pretty broad question, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I think that this community is so fabulous, and that I think it's just important to really remember if this is, what I wish I knew, kind of, PCOS is not your
Yeah.
fault,
Hmm.
know that what works for one person might not work for you, and really be patient with yourself and take your time, and it's not going to be tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And like I wish that I knew that this was going to happen. I wish I knew that I could be
Yeah.
here, because it felt impossible. It felt like such an uphill battle, but I think just the knowing that at some point you're going to get there, and that to be kind and patient with yourself is important, super important.
Yes, I totally agree. That's my outro, which I'll do in a minute. But yeah, I think like we were saying earlier, like there's so much negativity about the diagnosis with PCOS, but there's I don't think there's enough information given to women when they first get diagnosed with PCOS, like the positives, like, you can live a normal life, you can have kids, you can lose weight, you can feel beautiful
Yeah.
again. I think it's just, you just get told the bad things, like, oh, you may get diabetes, you may get, you may face infertility. But yeah, I think, I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because it's true. Like there's hope with PCOS.
Yeah. Yeah, there's hope and there's beauty and there's a community ready to support you. And yeah.
Well, if our viewers want to connect with you or purchase one of your bars, how can they do that?
Yes, our Instagram is at Resist Nutrition. You can find the link in our bio. Our website is resistnutrition.com. You can check out everything there, in addition to all the studies that back up the wonderful benefits of our ingredients. Those are the two best ways to find us. We're also on TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Resist.protein is our handle. So
Okay,
you can
great.
find us on there.
By the way, I've tried the bars. They're really delicious. And I feel like, they're nice and convenient to have when
Mhm.
traveling, or if I'm like running late, I can just have it with like to-go breakfast. So definitely check it out, guys, if you haven't tried them yet.
Yes, definitely do.
Okay, so my outro is be kind to yourself, be patient, and focus on progress and not perfection. So I say that at the end of all my videos. If you guys have any questions for me or Drew, leave them in the comment section, and check and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much, Drew, for being here and taking the time to have this conversation with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.